Buenas tardes, me llamo Mateo Moen y mi español es muy mal, so we're not going to do that. I'm happy to be here from Austin, Texas, and this is an awesome conference, and I'm loving Mexico City. It's just great. I'm talking today about Tang and Clevis and encrypting your infrastructure without getting fired, because we don't want that. That's not good. And I've got a whole bunch of certifications and whatnot. I've been in the tech industry for more years than I care to admit. See the gray hair. And if you look there at the bottom, there's a cute little image that I grabbed wholesale off of Wikimedia Commons. And that says Clevis there. We're going to be talking about a little bit about this open source set of projects called Tang and Clevis, among a bunch of other stuff today. But that thing on the outside is a Clevis. And in the middle, there's the block. That's a thing called a Tang. And if we look at that thing there, we've got a pin as well. So we're going to get to all of that stuff in a bit. But first of all, a question. So who here in the audience is interested, not yet in cybersecurity, InfoSec, but is interested in entering InfoSec cybersecurity? Okay, handful of hands. All right. Next question. Who here in the audience has been involved and employed in InfoSec, cybersecurity, and very closely related fields for at least 5 years? 5 años. All right, rookies, keep those hands up. Rookies, look at these hands. Lunch is coming up, so now you know who to bug and whose brains to pick. So there you go. InfoSec careers, we talked a little bit about that. And also look, for the rookies out there, I can't stress this enough, how important it is to get involved in the InfoSec community. This conference that you're here at, it's all volunteer run. This is a labor of love. Yes, we have a bunch of sponsors here at this conference that are footing lots of the bills. You paid a little bit there. Look, most of this is being paid for by the sponsors, including Deloitte. Thank you very much for hosting this. But you know, this kind of thing right here we've got does not happen with volunteers, and it's all about volunteers. So look, you want to get involved in this, I've done a little digging here since I've been here, and in the local area, there's this thing called the No Trust Security Meetup, No Trust Meetup. Check that out. You can check that out at meetup.com. And look, you really want to bootstrap and get your career going in InfoSec. B-Sides CDMX. Look, if you look on my shirt here, it says B-Sides Tampa. These days I live in Austin. Once upon a time I lived in Tampa, Florida. And when I lived in Tampa, Florida, at one point I ended up somehow on the board for Tampa, B-Sides Tampa, rather. It's more accurate to say that I was a lackey for the actual smart people running B-Sides Tampa, but that's beside the point. You want to get involved, you want to really help out, you volunteer for B-Sides CDMX next year. And look, the volunteers right now, they're going nuts. They have not gotten much sleep recently. After this thing ends, they're going to party tonight, and they're not going to want to think about this for about a week or 2 or 3, something like that. But go on the B-Sides CDMX website, and I've already looked, there's a way to do contact. You set a note on your calendar, and about 3 weeks from now, you click that thing on B-Sides CDMX and say, next year, I want to volunteer. I promise you, you reach out 11 months ahead of time, they will find all sorts of nonsense for you to do. So great way to get involved. And look, another thing here is in Austin, I'm on the board. I'm the vice president of an organization called the Information Systems Security Association. It's a worldwide organization. It's different from organizations, if you're familiar with organizations like ISC Squared. I'm also a member of ISC Squared, or ISACA. ISSA is totally independent of any certification and whatnot. It's all about the broad aspects of information security in general. And I just did a little digging here. Apparently, Mexico is one of the, maybe the only Latin American country that does not have a ISSA chapter. So, hey, you want to get involved in the community? Go start an ISSA chapter here in Mexico City. It's high time that somebody did. Highly recommend go check out that organization. It's great stuff. So, story time. So, let's say that you are involved with security for a set of retailers, a set of stores, and these stores, let's say the stores are called, they're convenience stores, let's say they're called, I don't know, let's say, yeah, okay, we're working in Spanish here. Ocho doce. Let's say that's the name of your stores. Okay, I'm trying to say 812, like 7-Eleven. So you get your stores, and your stores, you've got your normal point of sale thing happening in the front of the cash register, you got your POS, but then you've also got in the store, you've got some sort of in-store infrastructure. In the back, you've got some sort of server. It's probably some sort of Dell or HP desktop kind of thing, but it's running in the back and it's running some critical stuff, and you've got it in some sort of cage, it's somewhat secured, and that's great. So, you've got that, and then burglars go into one of your stores, and it's nice that you've got that nice little cage protecting that piece of hardware, but they've got a crowbar. So they grab the thing, and they're just common thieves. They're looking for whatever, and they already grab the cash register. They're like, oh, bonus item, computer, and then they go sell it on wherever. And Anyway, your company gets all sorts of excited when the data that was on that server ends up on the black market. And while you're doing a pretty good job keeping all your credit cards and stuff off of that server, you had some stuff in flight or whatever that was there temporarily. It's bad. You've had data loss. You've maybe lost personal customer information. It's bad. And you're thinking, well, no store would ever do this sort of thing. Look, I mean, at this point in America, Chick-fil-A is running Kubernetes clusters in the back of their stores. People are doing this stuff. So it's bad. So in short, what if I told you that bad people want to steal stuff? So what would happen if stuff you had, valuable stuff you had, was stolen from your data center or your cloud infrastructure, or as we were talking about here, your edge computing Kubernetes cluster? It'd not be good. Data theft is very expensive. Now, how expensive it is to your particular organization, that really comes down to your particular organization. I could sit there and grab off the internet from Gartner and whatnot some statistics that claim how much money is lost in each particular act of data theft. I mean, it really comes down to your particular circumstances and what is going on for your business as to how much a particular data breach, or rather a bit of data theft, would be for your company. But it's generally bad. It's something you at least want to mitigate. How much you want to mitigate it? Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but you definitely want to do at least some sort of mitigation. So, in the case of our example with our convenience store, in the back, if we had data at rest encryption on that server, everything would be cool. They'd have grabbed the server, and all they'd have is an encrypted hard drive, and that's it. Common thieves, no big deal. I mean, data at rest encryption, it protects you from common thieves. What does data at rest encryption not protect you from? Common thieves with crowbars. What does it not protect you from? It doesn't protect you from ransomware. I mean, it's great that your data at rest is encrypted, so you get nailed by ransomware, and congratulations, now you've encrypted the stuff that also has been encrypted by the ransomware on top of it. Oops, not good. It certainly does not protect you from actual hacking talent, like people with serious computer hacking skills. It just doesn't work. So, Linux root partition encryption. So in the case of, we were talking about Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A's got Kubernetes clusters, so they're not running Windows, they're running Linux. So you've got your Linux root partition, and with the encryption on it, you've got a chicken and egg problem with disk encryption. Look, you've got this problem whether you got Windows or Linux, or whatever, or Mac OS. You've got your data at risk. You've got your encrypted data on your hard drive, but at some point you're going to turn off the power, and then you turn on the power on your computer, and somehow you have to do this decryption stuff. And if you get it wrong, you've DOS'd yourself. You've CrowdStriked yourself. If no offense to the folks running CrowdStrike, but it's been in the press. A whole bunch of people have a whole bunch of downtime right now because of that. Alternatively, with this kind of thing, hopefully you've got a backup passphrase sort of thing. You could manually enter your passphrase. That's great on a work laptop that you're handing an employee as an alternate means of decrypting. If they know what the passphrase is or whatever, you could do that. That's not okay when you've got store clerks who probably aren't allowed to know what the passphrase is to decrypt their in-store server. Maybe the manager's allowed to know. I don't know, but it's just a bad situation. So your other option would be like an escrow server. And there are ways to do this. You can look online. There are various people that have demonstrated how to do this sort of shenanigan with, say, SSH. And you've got your thing connecting to an SSH server, and that's actually holding the decryption key. And that's how, during boot, it connects to an SSH server. It grabs the key and gets it back. That's great. I mean, unless, of course, that particular server that you're using there gets compromised. That's bad. You've also got this thing called TPM. And we'll be talking about the TPM some more. Who here has actually played with TPM in production? Okay, you guys are lucky. Consider yourselves lucky. There are no kids here, right? Yeah, okay. It's down, not across. But not all is roses in this world. Okay, we've got the TPM, the Trusted Privacy Module. We've got the Trusted Privacy Module is theoretically tamper resistant. So it's this chip that's on your system, and it contains a whole bunch of stuff. We'll get into it, but in theory, it's supposed to decrypt your hard drive, the magic that's on this chip. These days, it's not necessarily on a discrete chip. It might actually be part of your overall chipset on your system, and that's better when it's not on a discrete chip, but it's still hardly foolproof. So a few weeks ago at my local meetup in Austin, at my local DEF CON meetup in Austin, the guy that runs it was doing what's clearly the beginnings of a preliminary talk he's going to do, where he's demonstrating how in his spare bedroom he's got not modern chips, not the latest and greatest in nanometer, in manufacturing for chips. These are chips from a few years ago, but he's demonstrating a proof of concept where he's got the chip and he's shaving off bits of the chip, and then he's got a laser beam that he is flicking at different parts of the chip. And the idea, there's a lot of trial and error doing this sort of thing, but the idea is eventually you hit the right spot, it actually flicks the bit on the chip. Now, I'm no, expert on chips and security. Okay, I know some stuff about security, but I'm no expert on all of this sort of stuff. But man, you start flicking bits on chips like that. You've got your quote trusted privacy module. You could theoretically flick enough bits to convince the trusted privacy module that, hey, everything's okay, give me everything, it's cool. So that's not good. So yeah, lasers are the future. And look, I mean, if this guy is doing this in his back bedroom with some ridiculous technology, the whole point is that there are actual people with talent that can do this for real on modern technology and probably way more accurately. So more practical variety of circumvention here. I'm going to actually show you a little bit of a video. We're not doing audio, forget that. But I'm going to show you a little bit of a video for YouTube here in a second here. And what this guy's going to demonstrate is he's bought some nonsense. He's got a Raspberry Pi Pico, and he put some code together, and he's going to sit there and take this thing and stick it on top of the discrete TPM chip on a laptop. And as the thing is booting up, his little piece of hardware that sticks on this chip is going to lift off the decryption key as it's sent over the bus off the pins of that chip, back to your system so that Windows BitLocker can decrypt your disk. He's going to demonstrate that he's going to lift the decryption key off, and folks, once you've done that, it's trivial at that point. You yank out the SSD or hard drive or whatever and stick it on the Linux computer or whatever, and he's going to demonstrate all that. So here, we're going to look at this video very quickly. And I'm going to show you a link to this at the end of the presentation. So here, he's got the laptop, he takes off the cover here, and just lickety-split, he's got his Raspberry Pi Pico thing, boom, on top, he's got the decryption key, and my goodness, that was 42 seconds there it shows on his clock, and he's going to talk some more about BitLocker. Anyways, a cool video, I highly recommend you go check it out afterward. So network-based decryption. I mean, clearly the TPM is not all it's cracked up to be. It's not what Microsoft is claiming it is in terms of it's the end-all be-all. It's going to cure all your problems. It's going to cure cancer. Freshen your breath, all that kind of thing. Clearly, there's more to it than that. And I'm going to demonstrate, and we're going to talk a little bit about this thing with network-based disk decryption. What if, instead of just having like an escrow server like I was mentioning before, what if instead we could actually use the network as one of the things we have in terms of authorizing who we are, improving who we are, and we're actually going to do some cool cryptography and talk about it a little bit. We're going to use this thing called the McCallum-Relia exchange, and it is just a variation on Diffie-Hellman, and it's going to do disk decryption without escrow, as I mentioned. So, a little bit about Diffie-Hellman. Who is familiar with Diffie-Hellman? Couple of hands. So who here has gone on a website in the past few days? Yeah, okay, nobody's raising their hands. I don't believe you. Anyway, Diffie-Hellman is what powers freaking everything on the internet. Every time you use HTTPS, you're using Diffie-Hellman. And in short, again, something I totally snagged off of Wikipedia, yay Wikipedia. In short, what we've got here is both parties have a private public key pair, and we're going to trade our public keys, and we're going to do a whole bunch of math, and at the end of the whole thing, we end up establishing a shared secret using the public-private key pairs that we both have. We establish a shared secret across the internet or whatever, the insecure network, and the shared secret never once had to travel across the internet. That shared secret is used as an encryption key for an encrypted session. Diffie-Hellman, it's magic, and it's what powers our world. So that's normal Diffie-Hellman. This McCallum-Relia thing is a little bit different. So you've got the Clevis client, so that would be the thing sitting on your big iron server. Maybe it's that Dell or HP desktop you've got sitting in the back of your convenience store, but it's your, quote, server. And then on the other hand, you've got a Chang server. Now this thing is really lightweight. I mean, it's called a server because technically it is, but there's really nothing to it. And so the Chang server, there's its public key. Then your big iron server does some magic there. The client generates a new public-private key pair, and then comes the best part. Apparently, the laser thing doesn't work on this cool screen. Then comes the best part. Math happens, but the best part here is at the bottom. The client discards its private key because it never uses it again. So again, this is a variation on Diffie-Hellman, not the same thing. And so that's the first piece. That's when initial trust is set up on this particular step. The initial setup. Anyone who's ever used SSH, you initially connect to a server, and it asks you, hey, the server's fingerprint is whatever it is. It plops a whole bunch of stuff with a cool little set of characters and a pattern kind of a thing. That would be the equivalent with SSH of establishing trust, and that's what we're doing here in this step. The next step would be what happens every single time the server boots up. So again, you've got your big iron server. It generates a new public-private key pair for a different purpose this time, and we do some math. The Chang server does some math and sends some stuff back, and this is enough for the, quote, big iron server to reconstitute its decryption key for its boot volumes and presumably maybe the rest of the volumes on the system. And what's magic here is nowhere is the decryption key stored. It's all in the world of math. And we're talking a little bit, and look, if you really want to geek out with the math, I grabbed this presentation from Red Hat. Actually, I know Red Hat is in the building. Maybe there's some Red Hat people here. Please don't sue me. I totally ripped this off your presentation. But here's some cool tech math that explains this in more detail. And if you're really into discrete math, geek out with that. Really cool stuff. So the Chang server, I mentioned, that's a very small thing. We've got our big iron server running Clevis. The Chang server, really, really lightweight thing. It's a lightweight HTTPS server. It can be run on something like a Raspberry Pi. In this case, this is a Raspberry Pi Zero. It serves up Jose, which is a variation on JSON with encryption, and it'll do this whole McCallum-Relia thing. So that Raspberry Pi Zero, I mean, that's got enough horsepower to do a whole data center, and then some. By the way, I meant to say this at the beginning, guys. You know, I speak quickly, and I'm American. I try not to be an ugly American. But at the end, we're going to have a QA session. We're going to have a live demo a little bit or two. But if at some point you're confident, if you've got a question, save it for the end, please. However, with the exception, if you're pretty sure that I'm saying something that a significant minority of the folks in the audience don't understand, please do shout, and let's clarify that. So please do anything that seems, you know, if there's a language barrier, please do shout out and let me know. I'll be glad to cover that in the bill here. So Clevis. So we were talking about the Tang server. Clevis is the thing that's running on your big iron server. It uses a LUX slot. We'll come to what LUX is in a little bit here. And you can still decrypt and manually decrypt things with a different LUX slot. LUX is cool. We're going to see how that works a little bit as well. So that's Clevis. A word on LUX. LUX is the Linux Unified Key Setup. Who here has ever played with and is familiar with LUX on Linux? Oh, come on, somebody has to have played with LUX. Okay, handful of hands. So LUX is the easy way to do encryption on Linux, and is frankly the preferred way to do easy encryption and decryption. So you've got one master key for a volume, a LUX volume, and then you've got a bunch of slots. Specifically, you've got 8 user slots with LUX. And here's an example of how this looks in short. You know, you've got your master key, and slot 1, when you set up an initial LUX volume, is going to contain a passphrase that you entered when you set up the LUX volume. That passphrase, when you enter the passphrase correctly, that will decrypt the master decryption key, which is then used to actually decrypt the storage volume or the block volume in question. And LUX provides extension. You could actually have multiple passphrases if you want that sort of thing. So if you want to, I don't know why you want to do that. Maybe you do in case you lose one of your passphrases or something. But you know, theoretically, these passphrases should be very long. They should be like at least sentence length. They shouldn't be a sentence that can be found in a book. You know all that stuff. So with Clevis, you set up Clevis on the boot volume to automatically do decryption. Clevis will use one of those slots, but if you notice, slot 1 still contains your passphrase that you can use to decrypt it. So if for some reason Ting and Clevis don't work, you've got a backup option to decrypt the volume in an emergency. We'll talk about ways to avoid that kind of emergency happening in production, but that's always nice to know that that's there for you. So you've got your Ting server, and theoretically, it could be on the other end of a VPN. This might be a good option if you've got, in the example of the convenience store. But in that case, that also means that if your VPN or your network connectivity is down, that also means that your store server can't come up. So maybe that's not okay. It could also be something that you hide. Remember, the Tang server could be running on a Raspberry Pi Zero. If you really want to get crazy, there's no reason why that Raspberry Pi Zero couldn't actually be in your drywall without any way to get through it without busting your drywall. You could hide this thing very well if you want to. For added security on this Tang server thing, it has a set of public and private key pairs, and much as you do with your web server, you probably periodically want to rotate those pairs. Now you can replace the pairs, the key pairs that are handed out for establishing new trust relationships, but you want to hold on to the old pairs, and Tang server can handle having the old pairs stick around even though it's not handing them out anymore, because you'll need those to decrypt any of the servers that establish trust with those, and you better not be throwing out the old pairs until you're sure nobody's using it, you know, just cryptographic maintenance stuff. All right, now this is where I was going to do the live demo, but we had some problems trying to set all of this up, so I'm actually going to do a, we're going to, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Bill O'Reilly, but we're going to do it live later. And yeah, so we're going to try to do that cutover only once with the AV because I don't really trust it. So anyway, if we're going to do that, you'd see all of this awesomeness, and you're just going to have to imagine you saw it. You're going to see it at the end. It's going to be great. So what this solution protects you from? It protects you from common thieves, as we've covered. But, you know, it doesn't really protect you with, from sophisticated people with skills. You know, ultimately, they have you and your data if the people with skills are the ones doing the burglary. If it's not just a thug with a crowbar, if it's someone with talent from people at this conference with a crowbar. Uh-oh. So, defense and depth strategies. Clevis has the ability to require more than just one Tang server. You can do this thing called Shamir secret sharing, which allows you to do really complicated, or at least really cool cryptographic stuff where you could have, or you could have both TPM2 and Tang. You do all sorts of cool stuff with this. You can also have a quorum of Tang servers, which is really, really cool. So you could say you've got 5 Tang servers out there for some reason. You could make it so that in order for the system to actually pull off decryption, you need at least 3 of them. So cool stuff. But with great power comes great responsibility. Ultimately, you know, all of this is a business decision. And frankly, all of this is risk in and of itself. We're trying to mitigate risk, and yet we're doing friggin' risky things. So I talked a whole lot of trash about TPM earlier, and now I'm going to un-PP TPM a little bit. This is, I don't know if you guys get this reference. This is a thing, especially in Halloween. People throw rolls of toilet paper as mild vandalism. It's pretty harmless, mostly. So in un-TPing TPM, you've got TPM version 1.2, which was the first thing that was massively deployed. And my goodness, it was horrible. It's still out there, and you can actually, some TPM modules, you can downgrade them to 1.2 if you need to for some reason. It's weird, and like each implementation is wildly proprietary and bizarre. TPM 2, on the other hand, is definitely better. It's not nearly so bad, but again, it's still hardly panacea. So TPM, you know, you've got your BitLocker bits, your UEFI bits, and you've got your secure boot. It's small, and it is a small computer that's sitting on your motherboard, well, actually these days, on your chipset. And the APIs for TPM will interact with that very small computer that theoretically we should trust. If you as an individual want to trust it, I mean, that involves a whole bunch of corporations that set up the TPM. If you say, go look at the specs for TPM, and you look at what's involved with the specs with TPM, you might not trust it at all, because you're just looking at these spec documents, and they are freaking huge and complicated. But that said, lots of people are looking at them. Maybe it's secure. You know, I'm not familiar with any horrible breaches with it. Maybe I'm wrong about that. The TPM, though, is very, very slow. But again, who cares? It's only used for you know, automatic decryption on boot stuff, like with BitLocker with Windows. So you can also store OpenSSL keys. Most people don't realize this. There's actually a module for OpenSSL where you can store your keys on it, and this is handy. Say if your server is breached, well, if you were using the TPM, maybe they didn't get all of your SSL keys if you're doing this kind of thing. Maybe there's value there. You might want to think about doing that kind of thing. It can validate tampering. I mean, TPM, that's kind of what it does with all secure boot and UEFI, and that's what BitLocker is doing. Theoretically, it can detect that. And this stuff also exists on Linux at this point. And again, how good is this? You know, seems to be okay. But look, I mean, without getting too deep into this, TPM, the way it works is it's doing a bunch of what it's called measurement. And the measurement bits are doing a whole bunch of math, and then the result of these individual bits of measurement are sent to the TPM module, and it's based on all of that the TPM decides whether or not it should give up the goods. Whether you're using TPM or whether you're using Tang or Clevis, I mentioned earlier, once you have physical access, you're kind of screwed. You know, I'm going to do the demo at this point. This is probably the right place to do it. So at this point, this is getting a little zany. So I've got 2 Raspberry Pis. I think we've got them back here. So we've got our simulated Tang server that's running on a Raspberry Pi. And then we've got our Big Iron server that's running Clevis. And I'm going to demonstrate the video that hopefully you're going to see on the screen if this works okay. The video is going to have the Tang server, or rather the Clevis server, your Big Iron server. That's what you're going to see on boot up. And here, let's unplug this. Are you ready to come over? Okay, so what we're looking at right here, folks. Are we live? What we're looking at here, folks, is this is what happens when you're not getting access to your Tang server. It's a little zany back here. I've got a keyboard. I was going to demonstrate what happens if I type to enter all of the to enter the passphrase. Actually, let's try it right here.